Cary Sherburne, Senior Editor at What They Think, and I'm pleased to be here today with Eric Beyeler, who is the Global Marketing Manager for Artistri Digital Inks at DuPont. So welcome.
So I am with DuPont. I am with the electronics and imaging business. And within that business, we have multiple products that talk about image, but it can be the computer image, so displays, right? Many products that enable you to make electronic devices that move data, project images, and so forth. Our business is focused on the inks, inkjet inks, and we have been in this business since 1990. So we've got 30 plus years experience of developing inkjet inks. For at the beginning the home and office market, and today we're home and office, textile, and commercial and packaging.
And one of the things, you're going to be speaking at the upcoming Smithers Digital Textile Printing Conference and talking about pigment inks. And pigment inks are, especially in textiles, are kind of the hope that we can perhaps speed up the adoption of digital textile printing for sustainability and supply chain reasons. So talk a little bit about your perspective on pigment inks, both in the textile industry and also you offer them in the commercial printing industry.
If you think about why we came to the digital printing market, again, in the home and office world, at the time is because there was a need for pigment ink. There were dye-based inks, but pigment is a little more difficult. You have these particles there and you're jetting them at high speed and high frequency through the metal openings, and everything needs to work right? So we used the technology that we had from the paint business, from a polymer and dispersion, and extended it through the right ink formulation with partners, and that's important. And I'm going to mention that multiple times, with industry partners, because we knew inks, but we didn't know printing, right? So we had to partner there and developed a pigment inkjet ink for the home printer. So that was again in the early 90s, and since then we have expanded to using pigment inks not only in the textile printing world, which we started in the early 2000s, and now today, of course, in the commercial and packaging world, and packaging being the next horizon, right? And you can imagine that printing on a piece of paper compared to printing on flexible film, there's a few dimensions of challenges that are different. And when I mentioned and introduced the aspect of the partner, I think that's extremely important for us to work with industry partners in multiple area of the printing. It sounds automatically you would want to work with a printer OEM, a manufacturer of printers, but also if you think about the software aspect, if you think about the pre-treatment or post-treatment, there's so many components that you need to be aware of to make sure that when you design the ink for the end user, this will be a positive experience.
And also just the finishing process, the durability, of the ink as it goes through the post processes.
We all want a beautiful image. So that's a given, right? There's no compromise on the beautiful image. It's not because you go from analog to digital that you're going to get a pass, that you can have a blurry image in the end, right? So that's not acceptable. But not only do you need a nice, sharp image, you need an image that lasts. That might not be true if you get your bill from your cable provider, right? So that one you might be okay if it rubs off after a day or two, especially if you can avoid paying it. But on the anything else, you want this image to say, would be it textile, be it a book, be it now packaging, right? So all these things need to have some good durability, and the ink itself cannot provide everything about the durability. So it is the combination of ink with either a pre-treatment, a specific substrate, maybe a post-treatment. All this combined, delivers the proper durability.
some of the OEMs at least position themselves as being closed systems, right? Use our printer, use our print heads, use our ink, you can't use anybody else's ink, all of that. So how do you work in that sort of ecosphere?
So these are many joint developments. So, over in the 30 plus years that we've been working in this industry, we have worked with OEMs worldwide to develop inks for their specific printers and for specific applications.
Mhm.
And so our scientists and their scientists, get together. We get an understanding of what the specifications are, and we make some proposals, and we together evaluate the product. And the one thing I don't want to forget is that many printer OEMs do not make their own print heads, for example.
Mm.
So there is another area of collaboration is with print head manufacturers, because there's something as simple as chemical compatibility that could basically be a big issue. And if we don't plan for perfect chemical compatibility between our ink and the print head, this could of course lead to issues for the end user. So all these have to be taken care of.
Sometimes you'll white label the inks, and other times they'll actually leave your branding on.
So there are some in the commercial and packaging world today. You probably will not know that you are using a DuPont ink because it is branded by the printer OEM. On the textile side, I think many of our customers know that they're using DuPont inks. Some do not, because again, it's private label. But also we have several customers that have their own branded inks, but do point out that it comes from DuPont technology. So all these things come up. So the Artistri brand is often mentioned in the textile world by our customers, by our OEM customers.
And I guess the final question, and maybe this is a bit of a discussion here, but a lot of what you read, or a lot of what's in the media, it talks about, pigment inks for textiles, making it possible to print, with the same ink on just about any fabric. So I wanted to get your perspective on that, because I hear from, some people say, well, yeah, I can do that, but we need pre-treatment, or there's a post-treatment step that has to be whatever. So can you just talk a little bit about what's the real story there?
And I think on pigment inks, we've been selling pigment inks for roll-to-roll printing since the mid-2000s, and then developed for direct-to-garment, and now being used in direct-to-film, since the late 2000s. The challenge there, as you're describing it for pigment, is the advantages, and sometimes we're overpromised. They're not oversold, meaning that they are there, but we overpromised because the technology was not ready to be so independent of substrate. So if you fast forward to today, what you see is you can print very effectively on cotton with pigment. And I think, one of the challenges that still existed on the cotton side, especially on the roll-to-roll side, was the wet crock. And now today, we, along with others, have some very strong offerings with very good wet crock properties. But if you think about, can I use it then on polyester, or can I use it on nylon, or can I use it on silk and use the same pretreatment? No. If you can you use it without pretreatment today? No. So there are some possibilities, again, depending on the type of image, the type of fabric that you're going to use. Yes, you can, but no, it is not one size fits all solution.
It's interesting. I was speaking with an OEM recently, and they were talking about their reactive inks, and how there's still a great demand for those, especially when you're dealing with silk and brilliant colors and all of that stuff. But it takes so much pre and post processing, the water and the energy, and so you hope that we'll get to a point where where we can do it without all of that.
Any one of us who has visited printing plants, be it one that uses reactive or others that use pigment, you know immediately in 5 minutes that you're in a different environment, right? And I think what with the pandemic, stressing one, of course, short orders, but also a shorter value chain, a shorter supply chain, says there's a lot more mobility to printing with pigment inks, right? Because you can install and get going in a much shorter time frame, and the size of the investment is much less, and the environmental footprint is much less. So I think all the advantages that were there, before the pandemic, were really heightened by all the circumstances that we experienced in 2020. And the momentum for pigment inkjet inks in textile, I think, is very strong. And we're seeing similarly on the packaging side, also a very strong market demand for solutions from corrugated all the way to flexible film. And so we're actively developing inks and overall solutions. I keep on bringing to that, right? Because I'm trying to make sure everybody knows we have great inks, but our inks can't do it all on their own, right? We need partners. We need the other parts of the technology to be successful. And that's what we're working on today.
There's one other thing that's been popping up a lot lately from different vendors is this whole concept of spray dyeing using inkjet heads. Do you think that is that something you guys are working on? Do you think that's a potential replacement for traditional dyeing?
We are not, because we are not essential in dyes. So our focus again has been more on the pigment inkjet. But I always say on anything that we do and we sell, our customers are much more creative than we are. Okay. And so I think any kind of advancement, right, that enables us to do things more efficiently with a lower environmental footprint, right, and still deliver what end users want and enables businesses such as ours to be successful, I'm all for it. So, one of the things that we're working on is to say, how can we use less ink?
Yeah.
To me, that's very important. And you say, well, you sell ink. That doesn't sound like a good, business move. But yes, it is, because, for example, again, in both the textile and the packaging side, the percentage of water-based inkjet as the total, versus the total is still less than 10%. Mm-hmm. And there's plenty of room, right, for us to grow. But we also grow if we deliver a cost-effective solution to the customer. And part of that is let's have less ink. Plus less ink on the fabric standpoint. That means it's the hand feel is so much better. You feel so much better, wearing a low ink content, if you want, garment than a high ink content garment.
Well, Eric, I really have appreciated our conversation today, and I just wanted to express also appreciation to you and to DuPont for the great work you're doing in this field, because, we're at what, 10% of, depends on who you talk to, but 10% of printed fabrics are digitally printed, and we need to get, right, we need to get beyond that quickly.
Any contribution, even if it's 0.5% that we can make, we're happy. But I think there's a lot of momentum for digital textile printing, for digital packaging printing, for water-based inks, and we're very we've been doing this for 30 years. We're planning to do that for many more. As a company that was founded in 1802, we're in science, and we're in these industries for the long run. So really appreciate the time here today, Cary.